Hey, Enrique, I don't see the recording button.
Okay, not sure why that's not up, but we are live now.
Okay, thank you. You can go, Kate.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. The August 23rd, 2021 Forest Grove School District School Board work session is called to order at 5:31 p.m. Tonight, we're going to discuss returning to school. And I think John O'Neill, are you going to be, John and Kim, are you both going to be presenting or just John?
Both, mainly Kim.
Oh, okay.
Let me know when if you want me to start. I can share my screen.
You can.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, am I in present mode here?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so many of the resources that we use to put together this presentation and to guide how we're running schools this year come from these resources. We have Ready School Safe Learners, which has been updated. The CDC guidance, that's the link to the CDC page, which has information about public schools. We get frequent information from our local public health authority, which is our Washington County Health Department. And then we also look at the link to monitor level of community transmission of COVID-19.
So ODE, as they were getting ready for this year, kind of identified these 5 bullets as being the ones that they want to stay focused on. And the first one is ensuring safety and wellness, which is our primary concern right now, is how do we get our schools open and keep them open. The second one was centered around health and well-being, as our students have been out of our buildings for 18 months. As they come back in, we want to be centered on their mental health and kind of how do we create a space that's going to help them as they come back into a full-time school experience. They want us to cultivate connection and relationship. Again, building strong relationships as kids are coming back. The last 2, prioritize equity, as we're beginning to look at how we're going to restart our schools, making sure we pay attention to the kids who may have suffered more in these last 18 months. And the last is to look at innovating. How do we do some things differently? How do we take some of the monies that we received and do things differently? So as Kim continues on with this presentation, I think you're going to see these elements in most of the recommendations that we have, but I just wanted to present them and kind of get us started with how we came together with all of these recommendations.
Thanks, Dave. So these are the things we're going to cover in this presentation. And I'm just going to make a disclaimer. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an expert about COVID-19. I really just have collated this information, and I'll do my best to provide information. If you have further questions, I can direct you to different resources. We know that information changed last week about a vaccination mandate. Our deadline is October 18th. We also know that the Pfizer vaccine was approved for ages 12 and up. And in our district, we've been partnering with vaccine with different providers like Providence and Virginia Garcia to do vaccine clinics in our community. So they've utilized some of our buildings. We're planning on continuing to do that. And we are working with Safeway to host a flu and COVID vaccine clinic for our staff, as well as regular flu vaccine clinics. I don't know if Dave wants to speak at all about the mandate, or if you have any other thoughts about that.
I had a quick question about it. I was just wondering how the staff is feeling about it.
So our initial comment, we still have some details that we have to get to around, like, how does this work out? When do staff need to have their first shots and the rest? All in all, our conversations with our initial employee groups, they're positive around this, which is we need to get and keep our schools open, and having folks vaccinated ensures there's going to be less absenteeism and more healthy people in our schools. So by and large, this is a positive thing. There's definitely challenges, and there's going to be some details as we begin to figure out how this plays out in practice. But all in all, this is a positive thing for us to try and keep our schools open.
Thanks. So starting off with face coverings, we know that they're now required. It's a state mandate for all indoor buildings. So we are requiring those in buildings for staff and students and visitors, any staff members, any adults and student. And this is really a continuation of what we've been doing in our summer programs as well. We know it's required for transportation for all ages, and that's a federal requirement. In schools, it's only required for ages 5 and up, but transportation, it would include all ages. So age 2 and up would be for transportation. We know that there might need to be some accommodations for people or students with medical needs. ODE is working on disability guidance that they're going to present out to us pretty soon. So we'll have more information on that. The only exceptions really to face coverings, you're actively eating or drinking, playing a musical instrument that requires the mouth. We know that students that are engaged in sports such as swimming and phys ed class, water sports, if wearing a mask could be a strangulation hazard, then they wouldn't be required to wear a mask. We also know that practicing or playing a competitive sport at any level, students don't need to wear masks, but with the caveat that coaches would wear masks all times. And then players, they'd wear a mask indoors when they're on the sideline. So when they're not competing, they might go to the bench or to the sideline. And then we know all spectators must wear masks indoors for any sort of sports or activities. Here's some face covering guidance, and this is what we use to help explain the rules and also just help guide us what we're going to do. Physical distancing. So OD requires, to the extent possible, that physical distancing in all daily activities and instruction happen. For students, that's 3 feet. And for staff, it's 6 feet. So basically adults is 6 feet, students is 3 feet. And that is 6 feet between students and 6 feet between other staff members. We're going to enforce that. And we're going to also try to minimize standing in lines and congregating with students and having reminders and verbal prompts for folks to separate. And physical distancing is required for outdoor spaces. Cohorting, so that's the definition of cohorting. We did this during our hybrid instruction. It makes it easy to contact trace. If you cohort, it also helps prevent the spread of illness. At this point, it's only advisory from the Department of Education. We're going to try to do this to the extent possible at K-6. It becomes a little bit more problematic at middle and high school when they're transitioning between classes. But our principals are doing whatever they can to ensure that as much as possible we do cohort. And then we're attempting to limit large staff meetings, and we're going to utilize our technology. So large staff meetings will be done via Zoom or another tech like Google Meets or something like that. And then we'll just kind of readjust as things go along. But for now, we're keeping those to Zoom. We're also going to promote hand hygiene in schools. This is another way to really prevent the disease from spreading. We should always be doing this in schools, but even more so now. So ensuring that kids and staff have access to soap and water and hand sanitizer, and that we'll prioritize these things throughout the school day. It'll be a part of the routine. And this is really the same practice we had last year when we came into hybrid, the hand washing, hand sanitizer.
Kim, I have a question about what does a cohort look like, K through 6?
Yeah, a cohort could be one classroom of students. So let's say you had a kinder classroom, it would be those students would be together the entire day and they wouldn't intermix with other classrooms. It does become problematic when you have kids receiving different services, but you try to maintain stable cohorts as much as possible. So there's not that, that mixing. So visitors and volunteers in buildings. So right now we are not allowing any visitors in the buildings. And this is consistent with what we did during hybrid, where if a parent or a visitor comes to the building, they utilize the buzzer and the secretary interfaces with them and helps conduct business that way. And volunteers will be extremely limited when they're vaccinated. So we're trying to really proceed with caution about having people in the buildings and intermixing, and really trying to just evaluate as we go along and continue to assess what the community transmission is and how we're going to conduct ourselves. We're going to hold IEP meetings virtually for the immediate future, just to the same thing, not having visitors in the buildings and just making it a bit easier. Ventilation, airflow, and environmental cleaning. So Eileen was able to update this for us. So thank you, Eileen. We're going to continue to optimize the amount of outside air through our existing HVAC system. So I know we've talked about this in the past. I'm not an expert on it, so you'd have to direct your questions to Eileen. We're still going to inspect air filters, maintain them, replace them, and then recommend to staff that they open windows and doors where possible and safe to increase airflow. We have purchased air purifiers in for all classrooms. And the facilities during COVID and environmental cleaning, their webpage is updated, so you can look at all the different cleaning procedures and their protocol for doing that, so for buildings. OHA sponsored COVID-19 testing. So this is only advisory, and what this means is that each building can provide testing. It's diagnostic testing, and that Abbott Binax now is the antigen test that the Department of Education provides for us. And this would only be for students or staff who are symptomatic and are in the building. So for instance, a student starts presenting illness, they are sent to the isolation room where a health IA, if consented by a parent, they would provide a test for the student. And that way the student, before he or she goes home, the parent would know whether the student tested positive for COVID. For staff, the same thing, it's offered to them. For students, it requires parent consent to a certain age, but staff members is offered. We're going to have all district schools participate in this year. Last year we had the high school because of athletics, and we had, I think, one elementary participate, and I think it went pretty well. So this year, all our buildings are registering to do this. There is also, go ahead.
Sorry, Kim, real quick
Okay.
question. So since it's a parental approval to do it, what if they don't approve it, but they had the fever and they had the symptoms? Do they just get to come back the next day, even if they don't go home and get
No.
tested?
No, the test really doesn't matter whether or not they quarantine or don't come back. It's really about symptoms. So they're sent home immediately. So they go to an isolation room until the parent can come get them. And then they would go home. And what we would say is, please find a way to get a test, call your provider, and we would follow up with that student and that parent. And they're not able to come back to school until they're symptom free. And if they have a COVID positive test, then they're under quarantine.
Okay.
We'll go through that a
Thanks.
little bit later. Yeah. The screening component of testing is now available, and it's on a voluntary basis. So that it's a partnership with OHSU where staff and parents can enroll and be sent a screening test home, so they could do it on a weekly basis. Some school districts are doing this. At this point, we're going to make that a school-based decision, and we're still reviewing that, just reviewing just the protocols and things around that.
So Kim, the Binax Now test.
Yes.
I became a little familiar with it last week visiting my daughter in California. She had to do one. She's a SPED teacher, and so it's a 15-minute. I mean, it's a quick result, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It was pretty impressive to see how it works.
Yeah.
So it seems like it's a great idea to test on site. So.
Yeah, it also helps with access to testing too. We know that some of our students aren't able to access testing. So this provides that opportunity.
What
No,
is the cost? Oh, I'm sorry, Mark.
Go ahead, Kay.
Are you finished? Go ahead, Mark.
Well, I can't remember what I was going to say. Those,
Oh.
those are being provided. How do we get those, Kim?
We get them from the state of Oregon.
You
So
do?
each school does an application, and
Okay.
then the state sends them directly to the school, and then staff who are providing those tests to students or staff, they go through a training in order
Okay.
to do that. And really it's a self-administration. So we know that like our little younger kids who
Yeah.
can't self-administer, we're not going to be offering that test to them. You really have to be able to swab yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's no cost, Kate.
There's no cost. You know,
Right, there's no cost.
I was listening to a couple doctors over the weekend nationally, and they were saying that one of the best things to do is to test the students twice a week. So is that something that Oregon is recommending?
So that would be considered the screening test. So the diagnostic testing is for people that develop symptoms. The screening would be the kind of the preventative. And I know it's advisory for Oregon Department of Ed. So you can choose to offer that, but it's really kind of an opt-in procedure. So any parent can opt their student in to do it. We just haven't required it for students, but there are some schools that are doing that. Right now, we're just really focused on getting school started and trying to figure out that diagnostic piece. Our communicable disease management plan, so we've updated it, and it does have specific COVID-19 information. We have to develop a whole section on COVID-19, and we will be posting that as soon as possible. So isolation and quarantine protocols. First, let me say this can be a very confusing process. So I'm going to do my best to explain most of it here. So every building has an isolation room, and that's required by Oregon Health Authority. And an isolation room really it's a space to isolate people that are symptomatic. And it has all required PPE in there. A health IA is in that isolation room, and they're head to toe with, a gown and gloves and things like that. So it's a little bit more, it's a little bit more sterile than most places. The health IAs are all trained by the district nurses. They manage all COVID procedures and investigations, and they do that really in collaboration with the nurses and the building principal, because it's just too much for one person sometimes. The district nurses oversee the quarantine process, and they're the main contact with the LPHA, which is Washington County. So how it works is if a staff and a parent contact a building principal or a building health IA if they have symptoms or a positive case. So if a staff member has symptoms, they might contact their building principal. The building principal gives that information to the health IA in the building, and they begin kind of an investigatory process. And then students or staff with symptoms in school are isolated, and then they're offered the test like we talked about. Parents are called to pick up the student. Staff is sent home if they have symptoms. And then the health IA initiates the contact tracing process. Here are some definitions. It gets a little bit daunting because you really kind of have to know these to understand the quarantine process, but your close contact means somebody who susceptible really means within 3 feet or within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes cumulatively. I didn't put that down there, but that's what susceptible means. So your close contact is somebody who's had that exposure to a confirmed case of COVID. A confirmed case obviously is when someone gets a test. Presumptive case means a susceptible individual who has symptoms consistent with COVID-19 who had a close contact to a confirmed COVID-19 case in the last 2 to 14 days before the symptom onset. So you could have symptoms but not yet know if you're COVID positive. Susceptible individual is someone who has not had a confirmed case of COVID-19 in the previous 90 days and has not completed a series of COVID-19 vaccination. So just, you can go back to those if we need to. All the investigation steps are defined by our LPHA, Washington County Health Department, and that's in collaboration with CDC and Oregon Health Authority. And just to note that every LPHA might do something a little bit different. So we know that Washington County has been extremely conservative. So when the CDC says that maybe someone only quarantines for 10 days and then they don't have symptoms, they can come back, our county health department sometimes has required full 14 days no matter what. So the health IA or district nurse will report a case to the local public health authority or someone who's symptomatic. And then that health IA or district nurse is going to contact that person or a parent to ask a series of questions. So they might contact several people, the teacher, to find out, has this student been in close contact with other students? Were they wearing masks the entire time? Were you wearing a mask? How long were you with this person? And then close contact for students is within 3 feet of a COVID-19 positive person for more than 15 cumulative minutes within 24 hours. And same for staff, but it's 6 feet. And then close contacts, we're trying to notify people as soon as possible. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time to determine whether someone's a close contact. And someone will only be notified if it's confirmed they've been a close contact. Any questions on that? Okay.
Kim,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted
That's
to
okay.
ask, how did it work, when the kids returned in April and May? Or was it April and May that they returned to school? Did we have any cases, and did this work really well?
I would say, yes, we had cases, and it did work well. I think at that time, everybody was kind of learning, and we really worked closely with Washington County Health. And it's a really confusing process because everybody thinks they know when someone should quarantine, when they shouldn't. So I think we've really gotten better at it. One thing we do have this year is we have a district health IA that's going to be helping coordinate all the services and help coordinate the other health IAs in the building, which has really helped with our communication with the local public health authority. And that's why I put this one in bold, that we rely on them for the most up-to-date guidance, because sometimes it can feel like, oh gosh, they said something different, but they're really the people that know the up-to-date information. So here's a little bit more about close contact. So we know that if you're a close contact and you're not vaccinated, you would need to quarantine. So that includes adults and students. If you're a close contact and vaccinated, you don't have to quarantine, but that's only if you don't have any symptoms. So close contact, you're vaccinated, and you have COVID-19 symptoms, you would need to quarantine. A close contact student that's vaccinated or unvaccinated with consistent and correct use of masks does not need to quarantine unless either one of those students has symptoms. Hope that makes a little bit of sense. Close contact that's not vaccinated with or without symptoms and a negative test, yes, quarantine for 14 days. So there is some confusion about, well, if I go get a test, if I'm a close contact and I go get a test in a couple of days and it's negative, then I can come back to work. And that's not the case, because you can develop symptoms anywhere from 2 to 14 days. And that COVID-19 can be in your system, but not show up for 5-6 days. So that's why the local public health authority is still requiring 14 days.
I have another question. Is there any different guidelines with regards to the Delta variant versus the COVID-19?
No, they have updated this based on vaccination status, but not based on Delta. They're still treating it pretty conservatively. And that's why we're seeing a full 14-day quarantine.
Right. I think the difference, Kate, is not so much in how we would treat. It's the number of cases that we're already seeing is more than we saw in the spring. And that just has to do with the transmissibility of Delta. And again, points at why we need to be very diligent around masking, vaccination, and these other health protocols that we're putting into place. I think Narce has a question too.
Hi, Dave. Yeah, I have a question. Thank you, Mr. Parker. The question about, or the information that you just provided about the quarantine rules and the 14 days. So let's say this is for a student. I guess the student can be K through 12 at any grade level. And you might be talking about this later, so I apologize if I'm jumping here. Will that particular student be provided the opportunity to have that education via Zoom or a different way, electronically?
I think we are going to talk a little bit about that later. I don't know, Dave, if we want to just wait until that instructional slide. Okay.
I can wait.
We
I
can
was
talk
just
about that.
wondering. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking that.
I have a quick question too. Are we asking people to divulge if they've had the vaccination?
So if a person was a close contact and there was an investigation, they would be asked if they're vaccinated or not.
So not until then. I was just kind of wondering, because if you had a student in a classroom and then you had a student that had close contact and they're not vaccinated, so we're just going to wait and then ask them and see what they say.
Help me understand your question again. Sorry.
Well, just, when my kids, like I had to turn in a bunch of vaccinations on February 13th or whatever. So then you pull it up and you look and so in the same situation, if you had to say whether or not you were vaccinated, if you'd had the Pfizer vaccine or whichever one, if there was somebody in a classroom that tested positive, you could pull up the immunization records for every student.
Yeah.
But we're not going to do that with COVID. Instead, we're just going to ask them and take them at.
No, so yeah, so we can verify students. So I was thinking more in the case of a staff member, if they're being asked if they're vaccinated, but there are a limited number of people in our district can access vaccination status. And that would include if they've had the COVID-19 vaccine.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the most recent information from our LPHA. So it talks about asymptomatic folks, no quarantine, but monitor for symptoms. And these are vaccinated folks. Symptomatic, they follow the sick policy. And positive tests, they isolate for 10 days or 14 days if required by LPHA. So I just kind of reviewed that. This is just another way to say it. Regardless of vaccination status, Oregon Health Authority is recommending that between day 3 to 14, that people that are exposed to a positive case get tested even if they don't have symptoms. Public health and communication and training. So our process expectations and protocols are and will be updated on the district website. That's both for the community and for staff. When we have a COVID-19 positive case, the school community, staff and students is notified by email. And we have to be in compliance with FERPA and HIPAA in terms of confidentiality. So we're usually just saying there was a positive case. And we also are working on updated training for school staff for this coming school year.
Okay.
John is
great.
on.
Yeah, great job, Kim. A lot of information, a lot of hard work. So our instructional model, as you know, our district is moving forward with planning for a return to in-person instruction for all levels, preschool through grade 12. The district is also instituting an online academy or school program for grades 1 through 12 for those families that feel safer in that learning environment for their child or children that were more successful in that learning modality. And I just checked the statistics, on our district website, we have an enrollment form, and right now we have 170 students or parents have signed up their students so far for grades 1 through 12. Also, contingency plans are being made for a pivot to comprehensive distance learning, CDL, as dictated by the virus as needed. The district will also maintain Canvas as our learning management system to provide a resource to students and parents in regards to a calendar of assignments, a link to Parent View for grades 5 through 12, that's basically the grade book, and a platform ready to support a pivot to CDL if needed. And that includes, NARSE, the student family circumstances, whatever, that might need to be quarantined, they will go ahead and access their class assignments through their teacher's Canvas page. So we want to be very intentional. We have a new teacher training coming up this week. And this is one of the main things that we're going to spend some time with our new teachers, getting a Canvas page created and populated. So that's basically our instructional model. We're excited to get kids back, and we're going to go ahead and follow our plans and safety protocols. Also, this winter, we're going to be very intentional in getting as many kids as possible assessed by our district benchmark for reading and math in the fall, winter, and spring, so that we've given the schools invested $1 million, which the principals have presented plans to Dave and I in terms of how they are planning and preparing to provide additional support and interventions for staff, for kids, so that they can go ahead and support student learning and accelerate student learning as much as possible as we come into the new year. So that's basically our instructional model. Are there any questions? Thank you.
I think the last thing I would say there's a lot of different permutations of what this thing might look like depending upon where this virus goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've really spent a lot of time with principals talking through like how we can manage all of those different situations. And I think we've had a lot of practice over the last 18 months in different models, but I just want you to know that we're still completely focused on getting open, but we're also doing a lot of thinking about if something else happens. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Are there any questions or any further discussion?
I think we're still going, Kate.
Oh, we're
We got
Okay.
more.
plenty of time.
Okay, and we invited Cassie Kenny here too. She's on the panel, and I'm going to take my best shot at the mental health and well-being slides, and then I'll have her interject or answer questions as needed. But this is one of the things that I think our team is the most proud of over the last year. We really had to act quickly to make sure we were centering mental health and well-being for staff and students. And I'm really proud of our care coordinators and our counselors and our administrators and how they really came together to put some things in place that we probably never would have done before. So we know that OD is requiring us to do all these things, but these are things that we have been doing, and they're a part of our practice and a part of who we are in Forest Grove. So we know that we're going to devote time for students and staff to connect and build relationships. We're going to provide class time and private time if needed for creative opportunities, link staff, students, and families with culturally relevant health and mental health services and supports, and foster peer student-led initiatives on well-being and mental health. And some of the ways that we're doing this. So K-6 schools are going to focus on community circle time that integrates the CASEL core competencies and identify safety with relationship building. So this is, really devoting that classroom time for these things. We have our K-8 student success coaches to support teachers in integrating social and emotional learning practices into classroom instruction. And we're excited to bring on board another student success coach this year. And all our K-8 staff, classified and certified, are going to receive pre-service professional development in the areas of supporting students return to school with social and emotional learning. And all our related service providers. So this is something that I'm super proud of the team for thinking of and doing, is our food service and transportation services are going to be trained in what we call QPR suicide prevention. And this aligns with our district suicide prevention policy. So we're really trying to expand to really include everybody in this effort.
I think that's an awesome idea, because sometimes that's who a student might relate to or might feel comfortable talking to. So great job. Great idea.
Yeah. So we're also going to prioritize social emotional health through the hiring of additional counselors. So thank you, school board, for helping us with that. We know that we have been able to bring the counselor student ratio down to 1 to 250 or below in the majority of our schools, which is going to help our counselors focus on the job they really need to be doing, which is supporting students. Our district mental health care coordinators, we have a bilingual care coordinator, K-8 and 9-12. They're going to focus on providing mental health consultation and connection with culturally appropriate community mental health resources. That's something we have continued to do, and they were also doing this over the summertime. We're going to provide teen mental health first aid as a part of an 11th grade health class. So that's an important addition. And one of the things that was really cool we did last year was our care coordinators and Cassie and a few other folks helped in developing a book study with staff, and it was really a time for them to come together. It was an optional book study. It's a book called Onward by Elena Aguilar, and we're gonna include the classified staff this year too, so expand it out a little bit more. And that was really a way to help staff take care of each other and give them a space to do that. So that was really successful. And I don't know if you have questions about that, or if Cassie wants to add anything.
I'll start.
Okay.
I'm really excited about the social and mental wellness piece. I've been really worried about our students for the last 18 months. We have no idea where they are mentally. And I feel like, you know, they're going to need a lot of help. And so I'm really excited about these programs, and I'm really excited about having more counselors. I'm really excited about the training for the lunch people or the bus drivers. I think that's all great. Good job.
Thank you. Any questions about any of the protocols or health and safety for this coming school year?
I don't have a question, just a comment. I think it's nice work that you've done on this. It is just, I just can't imagine all of the scenario, all of the things that can go on when you're going in-person schooling with this virus here. And so it looks like you have things very well covered and outlined. And so I think you've done nice work. So thanks.
I have to agree. It's well done, and the mental health and emotional piece is really, really important. And Dave, I have a question for you. Is the numbers of people being infected by the variant, will you keep us posted on how that's going?
Yeah, we were just talking about it today, about ways in which to inform our community about how the numbers of staff and the number of students that do have the virus without violating any confidentiality pieces. And we have some ideas about how we can make that happen. But I think it's important for us all to understand how many cases we're talking about. As we move in the spring, we had both staff and students who came down with COVID, but never more than a handful at a time. We're already, we have more than a handful of staff and more than a handful of students who have come down with COVID. And so we're already into a new chapter of kind of how we're going to manage this. I'm going to talk more about this in my comments coming up in the second half of this meeting, but we are talking about a way to communicate this so that we're being transparent about where the virus is in our district. And cabinet, I don't know if there's anything else that I need to, we're still working on it. I'll get you the details as soon as we kind of get it designed.
I have a quick question that my daughters have been wondering. They're curious about how lunch is going to go at the high school because there's so many students. And so they're like, maybe they're going to add another lunch. But I don't know I thought, I was like, honestly, you're probably just gonna do lunch how you did it, take off your mask to eat, and then go back to wearing your mask, but I don't know.
So I think there's a couple of things going on here. We have, many of our schools are looking at ways to utilize outside space, both classroom-wise and lunch-wise. I know we were just talking today about some ideas for the high school of how to add some more space, some of it being outside. I don't have an exact answer for you right now, but I can just tell you we're working on a bunch of different ideas there. I will also go back to.
I'm sure that Doug would love it if you guys use the new gym.
Oh.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
Or the old gym.
Yeah. Again, we're working on a bunch of different ideas there, but again, this isn't a zero risk situation, which is, it's how do we manage and mitigate the risk as best possible for each situation. So.
Okay, thanks. You're muted, Kate, if you were talking.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay. So Dave, I will end this session and then we begin the next session, regular board meeting at 6:30.
Correct. I think what we'll probably do is push up a screen just saying we'll start again at 6:30. Again, this will stay live though. Everybody's mic will stay live. So just make the warning, letting everybody know.
Okay. All right. Thanks again. The information was really valuable.
Yeah, great presentation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
See you in a few.
Brad must be away today, or
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, he won't, he's excused for today.
okay, okay.
I don't see a picture yet. Do you have a picture yet?
The whose picture?
This is Kate. All I see is Forest Grove School District in the green.
He'll take that down in a second, and then the other
Oh.
pictures will pop back up.
Oh, okay. All right. Great.
And I think you can start, Kate.
Okay, thank you. I will call the meeting to order. This is August 23rd, 2021. The Forest Grove School District Board of Directors meeting is called to order at 6:30 sharp. I'll do a roll call of board members. I'm present, Kate Grandusky. Mark,
Present.
Val,
Present.
Narcy,
Present.
and Brad is excused from the meeting tonight. The school board will hear public comment for unscheduled public appearances received through the designated form on the district website. Patrons who wanted to comment live via Zoom should have already registered as a participant, completed the form to provide their information, and indicated they were going to provide a live comment. If you are providing your comment live as a Zoom participant, please be sure your full name is displayed in your Zoom profile. You can change that by clicking on the participants button, hover over your ID, click rename, and type in the correct information, and then select OK. Comments will be read by district staff or delivered live via Zoom at the appropriate time on the agenda and will be limited to 3 minutes. The flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, we're going to have introductions of audience and staff. So I don't know who would like to go first, but
Kevin Reen, Director of Human Resources.
John O'Neill, Assistant Superintendent.
David Warner, Communications.
Eileen Clute, Finance.
Kim Shearer, Director of Student Services.
Enrique Piñon, IT Manager.
Karen O'Neill, High School Principal.
is that everyone?
Yep.
Okay, great. Welcome. I need a motion for approval of tonight's agenda.
I approve that we move with that we approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Mark,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Narcy,
Yes.
and I am a yes also. Tonight, correspondence is our next item. Val?
Hello, everybody. I'd like to begin by delivering a message from the board. Thank you all for your public comments, emails, and engagement we are receiving. We believe this is around the 30th board meeting we have held virtually. We continue to hold our meetings virtually because it is less risk to everyone. We do miss interacting face-to-face with the community, but at the same time, we are pleased that more people are able to engage in the meetings. We have heard that some people don't understand why it is safe to send our kids back into the classroom, but not to hold an in-person meeting. We feel that our meetings can be held virtually without losing or missing anything. We are able to follow our agenda, hear updates and information, take action on items, and hear public comments. I would like to emphasize that we do hear and/or read every public comment, and we appreciate receiving them. We think we have learned over the last year and a half that the same cannot be said for school. We have heard that CDL did not meet the needs of some of our students, which is why we have been focused on getting them back in the classroom 5 days a week. We have received many public comments and emails addressing the governor's mandates. There are people in favor of them, and there are people not in favor of them. Our focus is to get the students back in the classrooms and to keep the roughly 6,000 students and staff in our district safe. We will continue to follow the state guidelines to do that. We are doing our best to keep the students safe while providing them with a quality education. We think we can all agree that this is an exciting time as we welcome students back into the classroom full-time for the first time in 18 months. We ask for your support. While this is exciting for us, it could be scary for some of our students. They will need positive support from their families, teachers, and community. Thank you. At this time, Narce is going to deliver the same message in Spanish.
Thank you, Val. Gracias por todos los comentarios públicos, correos electrónicos y participación que estamos recibiendo. Creemos que se trata de la 30ª reunión de la Junta que hemos celebrado virtualmente. Continuamos celebrando nuestras reuniones virtualmente porque es menos riesgoso para todos. Extrañamos la interacción de cara a cara con la comunidad, pero al mismo tiempo nos complace que más personas pueden participar en las reuniones. Hemos escuchado que algunas personas no entienden por qué es seguro enviar a nuestros hijos de regreso a la aula, pero no tener una reunión en persona. Creemos que nuestras reuniones se pueden llevar a cabo virtualmente sin perder nada. Podemos seguir nuestra agenda, escuchar actualizaciones e información, tomar medidas sobre los temas y escuchar los comentarios del público. Me gustaría enfatizar que escuchemos o leemos todos los comentarios públicos y los apreciamos. Creemos que hemos aprendido durante el último año y medio que no se puede decir lo mismo de la escuela. Hemos escuchado que el DCDL no satisface las necesidades de algunos de nuestros estudiantes. Es por eso que nos hemos centrado en que vuelvan al aula 5 días de la semana. Hemos recibido muchos comentarios públicos y correos electrónicos sobre los mandatos de la gobernadora. Hay gente a favor de ellos y no a favor de ellos. Nuestro trabajo es mantener seguros a los aproximadamente 6,000 estudiantes y personal de nuestro distrito. Continuaremos siguiendo la pausa estatales para hacer eso. Hacemos nuestro mejor esfuerzo para mantener a los estudiantes seguros mientras le brindemos una educación de calidad. Creemos que podemos estar de acuerdo en que esto es un momento emocionante, ya que además de la bienvenida a los estudiantes al aula a tiempo por primera vez en 18 meses. Les pedimos su apoyo. Si bien sabemos que esto es emocional para nosotros, podrían asistir a algunos de nuestros estudiantes. Asustar a algunos de nuestros estudiantes. Necesitarán el apoyo positivo de sus familias, maestros y comunidad. Atentamente y gracias de parte de la señora Valerie Ingram y el resto de los miembros de la mesa directiva del Distrito Escolar de Forest Grove. Gracias.
Thank you, Narcy, and thank you, Val. Our next item is student representative report. Our student representative will be Sonia Postma, and she will be joining us on September 13, 2021. This has been a long ongoing tradition that our board has a student representative. They've added much to our agenda and input from the students, and we've learned a great deal from them of what's happening at the high school and throughout our district as a student representative. Next item is calendar notes. Dave?
Yeah, I'm gonna go right to my, I don't really have a lot of calendar notes, but I'll go right to my superintendent comments. Thank you, Chair Grandusky. First off, I want to take a few moments and highlight that the Forest Grove School District has lost some of its valuable alumni members. It's with a heavy heart that we inform you that Shannon Brown passed away in her sleep last week. She was an important part of the Dilley family, always making learning an adventure for her students. She also served on the Forest Grove Education Foundation after her retirement. She wanted to stay in connection with the school community and provide continued support for her fellow teachers. The family has asked that if you would like to honor her, that they do that in school supplies or books instead of flowers. So I just wanted to let everybody know that Shannon had passed. The second person we wanted to highlight was the former Forest Grove School District Assistant Superintendent and HR Director, Larry Mcmackin. Larry passed away on July 12th, 2021. Larry was a principal at Joseph Gale School and started Coffee with the Principal as a way for parents to come and talk with him. He moved to the district office as the Assistant Superintendent and the Human Resources Director, and was a great source of encouragement and support for employees. Lastly, Larry worked with the Human Directors State organization called OSPA and was part of the group that created the statewide teacher application process. So I just wanted to kind of honor them by telling a little bit of their story and let you all know that they had passed on. Next, last week I forgot to announce the Forest Grove Education Foundation received a donation of about $26,000 from Safeway in sanitizer and face masks. And so I wanted to highlight that. Those are already being distributed out to our schools for use by our students and staff. And then the last thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is to try and earlier in the work session, you heard from John and Kim about kind of the systems that we're putting into place for reopening schools. And I wanted to spend a little bit of time to kind of lay out what the status is of the virus and its impact on our district. So I'm going to spend just a little bit of time going over some data here. So let me share my screen for a second. Are you seeing my screen right now? Okay, great.
Yes.
So the first thing I want to do is kind of go through some of the data so you know what's happening with the Delta variant in Oregon and in Washington County. This first slide is our for Oregon, and it's the base graph that they use to kind of talk about where is the number of cases per day in Oregon. What I want to show with this slide is basically we've now eclipsed the largest surge that we had, which was last winter, December. The initial surge that we had that scared us into CDL and the rest, it is eclipsing that by a long ways. But this is now the largest part of the pandemic for us. This is the 7-day moving average. And there's a couple of things I want you to notice is since the middle of July, where we had very minimal cases, we're basically seeing a pretty linear increase in cases. And in particular, last week, there were 2 days that we had 2,900 cases a day, which was larger than at any point during the pandemic. So we had 2 record days last week alone. So again, and this is the state of Oregon. I've heard from some of our constituents that Washington County, this is happening in the southern parts of the state, and this isn't really happening in Washington County. So I wanted to pull some data from Washington County, and what this data is this is basically the hospitalization trends by region. And our region is this blue one here. And we also have a much larger population. So we would expect the cases to be higher. But what I want you to notice is starting in the middle of July, just this rate of increase, which is this blue line here, is just exponential. And we're just about matching the rate of hospitalizations that we had last winter. So again, this is impacting Washington County, and this isn't just a Southern Oregon situation. This next graph is Washington County cases. This is the actual number of Washington County cases. And what you can see is we've now eclipsed last spring surge, and we're coming up on kind of where we were in Washington County. We do have a much higher vaccination rate here in Washington County, so we would expect to not see as many hospitalizations. So we're below where we were in December, but we're coming up on it pretty quickly. This next one was a slide that was presented to us. Dr. Seidlinger, the state epidemiologist, presented this slide to the superintendents last Thursday, because another conversation that's been happening is that kids are not affected by the COVID virus to the same extent that our older community members are. And OHA has now begun to track pediatric cases. And that's what this graph is this shows kind of the pediatric caseloads over time. And what you can see is right now with this advent of Delta, the pediatric cases are higher than they've ever been in the state. This is for the state of Oregon, but I also pulled, this is by age group. So this is still the state of Oregon here. So it's showing you basically since the middle of July, where we were down here at the bottom of this trough, both age 0 to 5, age 6 to 11, and age 12 to 17 are all seeing big increases in and this is as of 8/8. That's the newest data that I could get on pediatric cases. So the last 2 weeks, especially in Oregon and in Washington County, we've seen a big increase. So I'm actually expecting to see these numbers go up some once they update their numbers there. I also wanted to look at and say, well, that was the state of Oregon. What about Washington County? These are the actual pediatric cases in Washington County. Again, the middle of July, we were around 26. We're now at 8/8, we were about 138. So that's about a 5-fold increase in cases over the last 4 weeks. So I wanted to spend a little time talking about what our purpose is here. Our medical professionals are telling us the information that I just presented to you, that there's some challenges right now. Delta is impacting our community. At the same time, they're also telling us that we need to get kids back into school. And we need to do this in a safe way. And I'm excited to get our schools open and our kids back learning in person. Our experience through CDL, some of our students did well, but the vast majority of our students, it's going to be much, much better when we are back in person with our teachers teaching our students. We have one goal this year. That's to fully open our schools for live in-person instruction 5 days a week. That is the goal. all of the decisions that we're making right now, it's to fully open our schools. Anything where our teachers are getting sick or our kids are getting sick is just going to disrupt that goal. So the decisions that you see us making are all about keeping those schools open. We want to make sure our administrators and teachers are ready to be in their buildings, focusing on their efforts, serving students in person. Any meetings that we can do digitally, we're going to do them digitally just so that we don't even have the chance of teachers in a meeting spreading the virus. It's why we're doing our board meetings this way. There's no reason for us to be bringing together groups of teachers and spreading this virus. Any of our staff that is getting sick is getting in the way of our goal of opening and keeping open our schools. Our buildings are putting into place these health protocols that you just saw. Vaccinations for all staff, students, and anyone our students interact with during their school day will need to be vaccinated. Masks for everyone, increased ventilation, portable HEPA filters for every classroom, increased sanitation and cleaning, increased hygiene for our students and staff. With these protocols, we think we can get open and we can stay open. And I keep repeating it, but I just want to make sure we're really clear. That is the goal. Get open and stay open for in-person instruction. That's what we're shooting for. Vaccinations for all staff means it's less likely that we're going to have staff out of our buildings sick. That's why we're doing that. Masking makes it's an easy, quick way to make sure that we're keeping people healthy, both our students and our staff. It also means that if they're exposed, when Kim went over those quarantine rules, if both people are masked up, we do not need to quarantine them unless they're showing symptoms. All of these things come back to keeping our buildings open. I want to thank our board members for continuing to support as we navigate this virus. We all thought we would be through with this right now. And coming into early July, we were all thinking that we were going to start this school year, we were going to open these schools, and things were going to be much, much different than they are. But here we are. This is our situation. And so we're going to sit down and we're going to figure these out. We're going to make tough decisions, and we're going to continue to make tough decisions. I appreciate working with a board that always puts what's best for kids first and makes decisions that will allow us to, again, remain open full-time for the whole school year. That's what we're shooting for. Thanks. Those are my comments for tonight.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave? Okay, thanks a lot, Dave. It is our goal, everybody, to be back in school healthy and safe. Unscheduled public appearances. David Warner and Kathy will check the form and let you know if there are any comments received. I think we've already seen that. So I'm going to read, the board appreciates community members sharing information during public comments. Public comments should be submitted through the designated email address and will be read by district staff or registered Zoom participants who indicated through the form they wanted to provide their comment live. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes, as is the protocol for board meetings. Public criticism or complaints about school district personnel are not allowed at this time. When it is your time to share your live comment, your name will be called and the district staff will connect you to the meeting. Please state your name and relationship to the district before you read your comment. A district staff member will be timing the comments. They will alert you with a 1 minute remaining. The question answer is available if you're having technical problems, but it's not for public comment. Are there any comments that will be given live?
Yes, Chair Grandusky, we do have one scheduled person who would like to do theirs live, and that's Chris Wilson. And Enrique will go ahead, Chris, and switch you to video, and then I'll start the 3 minute counter when you begin, and then I'll give you a 1 minute warning.
There I am, just like that. Good evening. A couple of things before I read my letter. I hear Dave go through your list or whatever. And I think about my letter. I think it sounds like I'm not listening to you, but I can't hear all your stuff and then jot down my notes real quick. So I'll just have to make responses and give them later. But anyway, don't think I'm not listening, because I am. And also, I do appreciate the goal to fully open schools. And one more thing, just wanted to thank you for mentioning our fellow alum that have passed away, and hearing you mention Shannon just makes my heart sad but smile. And she was a great lady, a feisty lady, taught me how to speak up, so here I am. Anyway, last time I was here, I had urged you to push back on Governor Brown's mandates requiring masks for children in schools. And it seems like our government is continuing to push. We're now being told that if we do not receive an injection that our government deems safe and effective, that we will no longer be able to work as a public school teacher or volunteer in our children's schools. And I'm absolutely in shock at where we are. There's many data points, scientific evidence. We've all gathered it over this last year. We know so much more than we did. We know early treatment of the coronavirus is critical. We know medications that can help. And we also know that the survival rate of this virus is over 99%. But tonight, I'm not going to present you with more science. I want to remind you of a document that was drafted for us by our founding fathers that allowed us to create this great nation, the one where we get to teach children, the Constitution of the United States of America. Let me read the opening statement of the Declaration of Independence.
1 minute remaining.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Our very freedoms and rights in this country were written on the premise that the one who gives us our liberty is our Creator and God. And we, as free people, created the society. And the society established a government that was to be run by the people. The government's job is to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The government is only to get its power from the people. But that's not what our government is doing. It's restricting our ability to work. It's restricting our ability to participate in some forms of commerce, and it's restricting our ability to gather. Our government has overreached. Where does our school have the authority to ask its members to inject something into their body? And where does our government offices have the right to make me take something so that I cannot continue working? Can I have 20 seconds to finish? Yes. I will not have health insurance. I will not have an income. I still have bills to pay. I have a mortgage. Fear and manipulation are being used to coerce me into doing something that I cannot, in good moral conscience, do. It is ironic. Don't we teach our children not to be bullied, to stand up to manipulation, to fight for what's right? I'm so tired of the insinuation that I don't care about my fellow teachers or kids if I push back on this, because I do love kids and I love our teachers and I love humanity. I'm almost done. I urge you again to take a look at all these protocols, the common sense, dig just a little bit deeper, study that VAERS report on reactions to this injection, study the history of how governments overtook their society, and study how fear creates an irrational base for action. Do not let our governor continue with the mandates. They are irrational, unlawful, and unconstitutional. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
We only had one live Zoom, correct, Mark?
Hey, Kate, before you go on,
Yeah.
hey, Chris,
Yeah.
I'll follow up with you the next day or two, okay? Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct, Kate. That was the only live Zoom person. We do have more comments to read, though.
Okay, go ahead then, Dave.
Great. Just let me get it situated here real quick. The first one actually came from our last board meeting on August 9th. It was, we were not able to read that at that time, so we want to go ahead and make sure that that's read. It is from Heidi Agelzoff. Dear Mr. Superintendent and Board, I am fully aware that at this point the masking mandate has taken the decision out of the hands of the Board of Directors. As frustrated as I am by this, I am equally as frustrated by your response or lack thereof. While other districts around the state have stood up and vowed to fight for the children in their communities, we have heard crickets. While I understand it is an ever-changing environment, I would expect to hear clear communication from our leaders as to what their plan of action is to fight for the well-being of our children. Children who arguably have suffered the most in the last year and a half. Last year, while other districts were finding a way to get kids back in the classroom, our district continued virtual learning at only 4 days a week. Last year, when the restrictions started lifting to allow more students in the classroom, you kept the students out by retaining those restrictions for our district. When other districts around the state returned to hybrid, they had students going several days a week, while our kids got 2.5 hours for 2 days a week. When other students around the state were able to return to full-time in person, our students were still hybrid at only 2 days a week. These choices fell in your hands, and in my opinion, they were not in the best interest of our students. At this point, I recognize that our fight is not with the board or the district, but rather the state governing officials. My concern is that if or when these mandates are changed and you are not able to hide behind state directives anymore, will your choices be in the best interest of our students moving forward? I challenge you to take a stand with the other districts in the state and fight back against government overreach to bring these decisions back to local control. Will you fight for our children? The second one is from Aaron Lloyd. Good evening, board members and Superintendent Parker. At the beginning of the last meeting, you tried to convince us why masking our kids is necessary due to a rise in the Delta variant. Let me take this opportunity to question and dispute your arguments. I hold a bachelor's of science in biology, as well as a doctorate in physical therapy, so I know a thing or two about this kind of stuff. You presented current numbers, which we all know are not accurate based on how, quote, cases, unquote, are counted and inflated in order to scare the public, which is also comprised of almost exclusively adults. So how do this argument pertain to our kids exactly? You are presented the prevalence of the different coronavirus variants, highlighting that nearly all the cases are the Delta variant. Where did this graph come from? Do you know that very few testing sites are able to test for the specific variant? These questions alone should make you question whether what you are presenting as an argument for masking our kids is actually valid at all. The masks that harm our children socially, academically, and mentally. You mentioned this Delta variant is, quote, more transmissible, end quote, than the other strains. Well, here's a little lesson in biology for you. As a strain becomes more transmissible, it also becomes less deadly. Once again, our children are not dying, so how does masking them protect them? Additionally, the graph showing projections for the trajectory of infections from the Delta variant is a joke. What science or data was used to generate that projection? Do you know that when the pandemic first arrived, the projections for how many Americans would die were grossly overestimated? Projections mean nothing because once again, it's all an effort to scare people into compliance. Therefore, another part of your argument for masking kids carries no weight. And lastly, to the individual who recited the Pledge of Allegiance last meeting, I must correct you because it actually reads, "One nation under God, indivisible with liberty and justice for all." I underline that part you intentionally left out, and I capitalized the words that appear to have no meaning anymore. When are you going to realize the CDC is lying to you? Politicians are lying to you. Our kids are not in danger yet. All of these mandates are absolutely crippling our so-called democratic society. You must take a stand now. Thank you, Aaron Lloyd. Next, this is from Melissa Tim, who is a teacher and a parent in the district. To the Forest Grove School Board, as a teacher at Cornelius Elementary and as a parent of Neil Armstrong Middle School, and a Forest Grove High School student, I am writing in gratitude to our school board and in support of our students, their families, our staff, and their families. Our school district has worked hard to take the COVID-19 pandemic seriously, proceeding only with careful consideration and following the guidelines of the CDC. Thank you, Dave Parker, school administrators, district nurses, and our school board for your commitment to the health and safety of our staff and students. I returned to school last spring, grateful that I was fully vaccinated. My children stayed home as they were not yet fully vaccinated. Distance learning during hybrid instruction was challenging. This fall, as we are all vaccinated, we look forward to returning to school with the expectation that our district will require all staff and students to wear masks and follow distancing protocol. The students I teach at Cornelius do not currently have an option to be vaccinated. It is all of our responsibilities to care for our students and their families. The students at my daughter's schools have the option to be vaccinated. However, there is no guarantee that they are. I do not feel comfortable with my children attending school if there are staff members or students who are unmasked. With the Delta variant, cases among the unvaccinated population is growing, and additionally, there are breakthrough cases among the vaccinated population. This is not the time to let down our guard. If we do, this virus will continue to mutate and spread. Additionally, I feel uncomfortable with students eating unmasked indoors. I would like to encourage each school to determine an option for families who prefer their students to eat outdoors. I am certain there are some staff members who prefer this and others who are comfortable with eating indoors. I believe we could effectively supervise both options, helping all families feel more comfortable. I support all staff and students wearing masks on school grounds. I support physical distancing and an option available for staff members and students who prefer the outdoor eating option. Thank you for continuing to support the health and safety of our students and their families, as well as our staff and their families. Melissa Tim, 23-year teacher in the district, parent of 2. Next one is from Laura Bauer, teacher and a parent. I'd like to thank the school board and administrative office staff for taking the health and safety of the staff and students seriously. With the unknown long-term impacts of COVID and ease at which it is transmitted, I appreciate that students and staff are expected to wear face masks and constantly wash and or sanitize their hands and other touch points in a room and building to slow the spread of COVID. Thank you again for your thoughtfulness, Laura Bauer. Next is from Nate Ball, parent of 2 students. I'm a dad of 2 kids in our school district, ages 4 and 7. I'm extremely grateful for the district's efforts to keep students, teachers, and staff safe while enabling a return to in-person schooling. With the Delta variant spreading so fast and future mutations looming, the sacrifice of staying masked for now is a small price to pay for the joy and benefit we all gain from having our kids back with their friends and teachers in person. At least in our own household, our kids and their friends take masking in stride. We do have to remind them from time to time, but the same is true for their bike helmets and seatbelts. Even apart from the concerns I feel about the further spread and mutation of the virus, if not everyone is masked at school, just a quick look at other districts who have already started shows what's inevitable if a mask mandate isn't in place. It's only a matter of time till the fun is over. Kids are testing positive and we're back on lockdown, doing distance learning again. For the sake of our sanity, health, and our children's futures, let's not let this happen. Please keep up the good work, and we look forward to seeing you in September. Next, Dr. Kara Lanning. To whom it may concern, this short letter is intended to be read at the upcoming Forest Grove School District meeting on August 23rd, 2021. I know that we are all burnt out and exhausted. I find myself sometimes slipping into a fantasy that we've turned the corner on this pandemic and that we can resume living freely without a fear of illness or catastrophe. This is not our current reality. The Delta variant has reminded us that we are still vulnerable. More and more children are contracting the virus and are becoming hospitalized. Our hospitals are near capacity and we are on the verge of not having the resources necessary to care for the severely ill members of our community. Accepting our current reality, we all need to stay vigilant in our efforts against furthering the spread of COVID-19 in our community. As a parent of an 8-year-old at Dilley Elementary, I'm especially concerned about community spread of the virus once school starts. We do have an advantage in the Pacific Northwest, though. Our school year starts later than other states. The advantage is that we can see how other state school districts are faring with and without COVID safety precautions. On August 16th, more than 8,000 Florida students in a single school district were placed in quarantine after exposure to COVID-19. She then lists her source there. The school district did not have a mask mandate. The week prior in Broward County, Florida, 3 teachers died of COVID-19 within 24 hours of each other. Again, another link to her source. These teachers were not vaccinated. It would be foolish to think that our children and educators are insulated from that threat of illness and possible death from COVID-19. Seeing these stories pop up daily triggers panic, but I am hopeful that maybe our teachers and children will avoid similar experiences because of our statewide masking policy. I personally know what it is like to have to return to teaching in person during a pandemic. I am a science professor at a local university. Last fall, I was nearly immobilized with anxiety and fear as I started the academic year teaching in person. I didn't know if I would get sick myself or, God forbid, expose my young son or elderly parents to the virus. The chronic stress and anxieties manifested into physical ailments and obsessive behaviors. Our K-12 educators and school staff have families and loved ones that they care deeply about and have a responsibility to keep safe. Teachers and school staff deserve better. They deserve relief from the constant worry of bringing a potentially deadly illness home to their families. They deserve recognition that their health and safety is important too. Aside from personal safety concerns, school staff and teachers care deeply for their physical health and emotional health of our kids, their students. This is our moment to work together as neighbors and to do everything possible to get our teachers and kids back into the classroom with as little disruption as possible. This is only possible with widespread vaccination for eligible individuals and universal masking. I applaud the decision makers who have clearly centered our precious children's safety and our educators' safety in making the science-based decision to continue masking requirements. Thank you for sharing my message. Sincerely, Dr. Kara Lanning. Next, Alyssa Wabel. Dear school board and school district leadership, I want to thank you for all your efforts in continually working to educate our children in a safe way in the midst of this pandemic. I have already sent a comment in support of the universal mask mandate, but I had the opportunity to speak with my daughter's principal last week and have several concerns regarding the district's return to school plan that I hope will be addressed prior to the school's opening. Number 1, lunchtime distancing. I was advised that at my daughter's school, they are only planning to distance kids 3 feet apart during lunch due to space staffing constraints. My understanding is that 3-foot distancing is safe with masks on, but 6 feet is required for safety with masks off. The Delta variant is spreading rapidly among unvaccinated and unmasked individuals. This seems very risky to have kids close together when they are most vulnerable. Number 2, plan for smoother learning transitions during times of home quarantine. Based on what we are seeing around the country right now, it seems inevitable that there will be times students will be exposed or will have other cold or allergy symptoms that may exclude them from school for several days. Those students will need a way to transition in and out of the classroom smoothly and keep up with the work that is being done. It will also make it easier to keep students with mild symptoms home if they have the ability to log into their classroom from home and not miss content. Number 3, the FGSD online program does not have an equitable option for our students in the district's bilingual education program. There are no bilingual teachers or curriculum in the offered online school. My daughter goes to Cornelius Elementary. Her 3rd grade teacher and the school as a whole did an amazing job of providing high quality bilingual education during CDL. I am now faced with the choice of pulling her out of her bilingual education program, which she may not be able to re-enter again after missing a year, or sending her back to a school learning environment that I am concerned will put her health at risk. Number 4, clear expectations that students sent home with COVID symptoms will be required to show a negative COVID test before returning to school. The reality that we are all living right now is very different than where we were a month ago. The Delta variant is spreading very rapidly in groups of unvaccinated individuals, which is exactly what our elementary schools are. It is not good enough to say that we cannot distance our students while they eat because we don't have staff/space. Instead, we must find creative solutions that ensure the safety of our students while following the best science and standards we have. I hope that the school board and district leadership will consider outside the box solutions and reevaluate the plans for returning our students to schools in this new reality of heightened community transmission and overwhelmed hospitals. These are the worst days we have seen in Oregon during the pandemic. We need to treat it as such as we consider returning unvaccinated students to schools. Thank you for your consideration of my comments. Alyssa Wabel. Next, Sherry Expo, who's a parent and substitute teacher. Dear FGSD School Board, I'm writing today as a parent and a substitute, formerly full-time teacher in the district. I have been very pleased with the communication from Dave Parker over the past year and how the district has followed science to keep people safe. This year, we thought things would be much better as we go back to in-person learning and teaching. But the Delta variant poses serious threats to children and adults' health and well-being. Wearing masks must be mandatory if we are to have in-person learning take place with any semblance of safety. Plus, eating outside is and should be added as a way to keep students from spreading the virus. My high school age son and I are fully vaccinated, and I hope anyone who is eligible will do so as well. But those under 12 cannot yet be covered by the vaccine, so we must protect them as well as we can by wearing masks and maintaining social distancing while indoors. Thank you for listening to my comments. Sincerely, Sherry L. XO. Next is Matthew Henriksen. This is a short letter intended to be read at the beginning. To all concerned, I want to thank each student, each school board member, district leaders, and school staff who have worked to adapt and respond with care and prudence during this unprecedented global pandemic. While it would be nice to return to normal, we must remain vigilant, and that is why I'm writing in support of continuing a universal mask mandate for students and staff during the 2021-22 school year. As the father of a 4th and 7th grader in the district and an educator myself in the neighboring school district, I rely on district leadership to make choices rooted in fact and based on the best science we have available. We know that social distancing, masking, and vaccination are among the best tools we have to combat the spread of COVID-19. We have a large number of youth who are not eligible for vaccination, and we know that new variants can be transmitted even by people who have been fully vaccinated. We need only look to districts in states like Texas and Florida where masking has been made optional to understand that without masking, COVID-19 cases among youth and the general population rise exponentially. All of our students deserve to be safe at school, and now more than ever, it is time for our community to pull together and do the best we can given this difficult situation. Masking, while not ideal, is a small sacrifice to help mitigate the risk that COVID-19 poses to our community and ensure students are able to safely return to the classroom with reduced risk of transmission and disruption due to quarantine. Sincerely, Matthew Henriksen. Next is from Catherine Tweedy, parent of a child at the FG Community School. I'm a parent of 2 school-age children, 7 and 4, and I appreciate the great need for compassion toward everyone in our community as we carefully weigh our navigation through the COVID pandemic. I personally feel grateful for the added safety that masking indoors will provide to all students and teachers in the fall, and by extension, the wellness of our whole community. I know how emotionally and physically trying this time has been for families and educators, but seeing my boys light up, getting to be with their friends again gives me great hope for a school year with the richness of them learning safely alongside their peers. I see my children have adapted, wearing masks when inside when needed, and are still thriving and growing despite the inconveniences of wearing masks. With great thanks for your careful consideration, Catherine Tweedy. Next is from Jerry Lerwick, who's an employee. Thank you for following the science and doing everything you can to ensure our students are able to attend in person. Your commitment to your commitment to student, staff, and community safety is appreciated. Next is from Leah Henriksen, who's a parent and district teacher. Dear school board leadership of the Forest Grove School District, thank you for your commitment to keeping our kids safe throughout this COVID-19 pandemic. As the mother of 2 FGSD students, 4th and 7th grades, and a teacher at Cornelius Elementary School, keeping kids safe and healthy has been at the forefront of my mind every single day since schools closed in-person instruction on March 13th, 2020. I am grateful to live and work in a school district whose leaders use science-based research and the advice of medical professionals when making decisions regarding how best to keep everyone safe so that academic learning can continue in these challenging times. Kids are very adaptable and resilient, as we know. In my experience, even very young children understand that wearing a mask is a simple and effective way to keep everyone healthy. When I returned to the classroom for hybrid teaching last spring, my in-person students happily carried on with their learning, and mask wearing did not seem to have a negative effect on their experience. Masking, along with physical distancing and a classroom air filter, helped us all to stay healthy and enjoy the last part of the school year safely learning in the classroom together. I am worried about sending my own children back to school in a few weeks, especially with the new Delta variant in the picture and knowing that no one under 12 years old is able to be vaccinated yet. I want all of our kids to stay healthy and have their school year be uninterrupted by quarantines and closures. I appreciate the governor's current mask mandate for schools and am relieved to know that our students will be as safe as possible in their classes with distancing and mask wearing. I hope we can find ways for students to stay distanced and safe during lunch time as well. I am grateful for the leaders of this school district and their commitment to science-based education, making that supports the well-being of everyone in our schools. Sincerely, Leah Hendrickson. Next, Jonah Ball, community member, aunt of 4 children in the district and sister to a 3rd grade teacher in the district. Hello, thank you for taking the time to listen to all of us parents, family members, and fellow citizens who are concerned with the health and well-being of our children and the entire community. I also want to thank you for the ways you have already been prioritizing the safety of our kids and school staff members. Your careful consideration of this scenario based on medical recommendations and science is so appreciated. This has been an extraordinary difficult time for everyone. Each person among us has been touched in some way by the health crisis, which still persists in our community. We are tired, stressed, and yearn for a sense of normalcy to return. In fact, our children's well-being depends on their ability to return to the classroom safely, to learn in person amongst their peers. Parents desperately need them to return to school so they can work during the day knowing their children are thriving and safe. We know that mask wearing lowers the risk of virus transmission in a significant way. And if we are to send our children back to school in close proximity, when everyone under the age of 12 cannot yet become vaccinated, we must do everything we can to ensure our kids will be safe as possible. If masks were optional, if masks were optional, we know it would only be a matter of time before the virus would spread in schools, requiring hundreds of students and teachers to quarantine at home again. This would necessitate returning to the significant inconveniences of remote learning, and in the worst scenario, these exposed individuals could become gravely ill and transfer the virus to a vulnerable family member. While it's not one's first choice to be masked, the inconvenience is minuscule compared to the lives that would be at risk without a mask mandate. Let us call upon something larger than ourselves and look out for the greater whole by enabling this collective masking agreement. We owe it to our overworked medical providers, to our vulnerable community members, our unvaccinated children, and to each other to do what we can to mitigate the risk of spreading infection. Please, let's take care of each other. Sincerely, Jonah Ball, Forest Grove community member. Next is Jody Owen, parent and a substitute teacher. Hello, school board. As a parent and an educator in the district and a member of our community, I believe that it is our responsibility as adults to protect our children and those people who are unable to protect themselves. At this point in time, we have a pandemic happening that has affected millions of people. Viruses like these will never go away, but there are measures that we can be taken to help control the spread and drastically reduce the number of people affected. As we have seen throughout history, vaccinations have helped control mutable viruses. Though it will never be eradicated because of its origin, vaccination is scientifically proven to help reduce the spread because of the less severe infections in vaccinated people. We are so lucky to have access to mRNA vaccines, which are the safest vaccines to date and by far the most effective. Unfortunately, at this time, children under 12 are not approved to have the vaccine, and therefore we must take more precautions to protect them. A properly fitting, multi-layered mask is proven to drastically reduce the spread of this virus from a sick individual to a healthy one. Masks are a minor inconvenience that can have a huge impact. Fortunately, at this time, there is a state mandate in place for masks to be worn indoors. If and when that mandate is lifted, if my children have not had the opportunity to be vaccinated, they will continue to wear a mask. I myself am vaccinated, but still wear a mask in the effort not to contract any virus. Even though the SARS virus is often not as dangerous in children and healthy individuals, being sick is a huge inconvenience. I would like the district and the board to know that my family and I are absolutely in favor of mask mandates in the schools, regardless of other state mandates, at least until all children have had the opportunity to be vaccinated. At the point I feel that families can decide what are comfortable with terms of masking, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to the community on this matter. Sincerely, Jody Owen. Next, Sarah Ball, grandparent of students. As a grandparent of 3 children in Forest Grove Public Schools, I fully support the policy of mandatory face mask wearing for all students and staff this fall. Masks are a simple and effective barrier that can control the spread of COVID-19 with additional measures such as social distancing and hand washing. By continuing to follow these practices as recommended by the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics, families can trust that you are taking every possible precaution to provide a safe learning environment for our children and their teachers. Thank you for staying the course. Sarah Ball. Next, Jana Peterson Bessie, who's a parent. Dear Superintendent Parker and Forest Grove School Board members, I am a parent of children in the Forest Grove School District. My older child will be in 4th grade at Dilley Elementary. I also have a doctorate in public health and work in the public health field. I have been grateful that our school district leadership has looked to data and to the guidance of public health officials to guide their decision-making. As a public health professional myself, I trust our public health leadership in Oregon. My family's hope is for our kids to stay in school in person this year, and so we are looking to our schools to provide the safest environment for them to be able to do that. Because the Delta variant is so contagious and there is a higher chance of outbreaks in schools, we are concerned that decreased precautions will mean less chance to attend school in person. We are looking to our school district to continue to keep our kids safe, and so we support masking, timely response, and information for parents when kids test positive within a classroom, and systems that will help kids remain caught up when they need to stay home due to symptoms or exposure. We also hope that schools will offer outdoor eating options for our kids so they can spend more time outside and limit exposure in the cafeteria. Last year, my younger child attended the early learning community on the Pacific University campus. Starting in March, his school was able to return full-time, and so he wore a mask all day, 5 days per week. We had no problems, and we are not aware of any within the school. We have absolutely no reservations sending our kids to school full-time in masks this year. We saw that our wonderful teachers at Pacific and at Dilley Elementary were positive around masking and about kids helping keep each other safe and well. And this leadership from the teachers actually increased our kids' enthusiasm for wearing masks. Thank you for your dedication and to the safety and well-being of the kids of the Forest Grove School District. Jana Peterson Bessie. Robert Lloyd from Dilley. Thank you to the board for hearing this comment. I know we are all want everyone to be healthy and back in class. According to the CDC, older adults are the ones that are more likely to get very sick from COVID-19. The risks to adults start to increase after 50, and people 85 or older are the most likely to get very sick. The median average for teachers is around 42, and 42 years old, and the average age of retirement is 60. The people in the extreme risk category are not the people in the workforce, and certainly not the children. There is significant evidence that the risk to children is too low to justify this mask mandate. There is a lot of fear in this pandemic that is being fostered by our leadership. If you choose to wear a mask as an adult, that is your choice. If you choose to get the vaccine, that is your choice. We have all had choices up until now, but the kids never have. We have to advocate for them, and there is no better advocate than the child's parents. Our leadership is mandating vaccination and making you wear masks, all while doing it under the guise of public health. What's next? What will our kids have to do for the next variant? I am asking the board to stand up and advocate for parents' choice. I am only advocating for children to not wear masks while in school. I believe that the adults should carry the brunt of the masking if they choose to do so. All we want is choice. We understand reason and logic. We want you to do the same. Thank you. Sarah and Chris Morse, parents. Dear FGSD, school board, and Superintendent Parker, we have 2 boys in Dilley and 1 going into Tom McCall Upper Elementary. We want to express our support for the school board's decision to not allow unvaccinated adults into the school and to enforce mask wearing for the foreseeable future. As parents, we support these decisions, and our boys thank you for putting their welfare first. Our boys are excited to be returning to school in September after missing their friends and teachers for almost 18 months. When we ask them about the return to school, they understand that they still need to stay safe until a vaccine is available to them, and they readily wear masks in the meantime. Over the last few months, we have asked them many times if they are having issues wearing masks, and they simply do not understand what the fuss is about. Over this weekend, we also asked our boys if adults who have chosen to not be vaccinated should be allowed in school, and they erupted in protest. But these adults, quote, but these adults may give the kids COVID, end quote. Even if we are not at risk, it's not very fair as they have a choice, and they must not care about us. This is out of the mouths of babes. Many thanks, Sarah and Chris Morse. That's the last one.
Thanks, Dave, for reading those. The board appreciates the comments and the concerns of the parents, and you know, it's trying times for sure with this COVID and Delta. The next item is the consent agenda. The consent agenda is made up of routine, non-controversial items to be voted on under one motion. Are there any items within the consent items a board member or the superintendent wishes to discuss separately?
I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I second.
Discussion? All those in favor, I'll do a roll call. Narcy,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. The first item tonight is the long-range facility plan, and Eileen Clute, our Director of Finance, will share this item with us.
Thank you, Kate. Tonight we have the 2021 Long Range Facility Plan for your approval. This was brought to you back in July by Mr. Parker as a first reading. It serves as our strategic long-term planning document and framework as we begin to move into our next phases of the facility and/or bond planning. It's based on our year-long planning work that we began last fall on updating the 2017 plan. It includes feedback from our Community Advisory Committee and community at large this last spring. At this time, administration is recommending the board to adopt the Forest Grove School District's long-range facility plan as presented.
Any questions for Eileen? Do I have a motion to adopt the Forest Grove School District's long-range facility plan as presented?
So moved.
Moved, yeah.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call. Mark,
Yes.
Narcy,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also. The next action item is the flexibility of instructional hours for Forest Grove High School, the 2021-22 school year. John O'Neill will present.
Thank you, Kate. The Oregon Department of Education has provided school districts the flexibility of instructional hours for high schools that allow for additional flexibility when scheduling students and calculating district compliance with Division 22 instructional hour requirements. The required instructional time for high school students is 990 hours for grades 9 through 11 and 966 hours for grade 12. Our school board has approved this flexibility, which seems like a lifetime ago, for the 1920 school year, if you recall. And last year, instructional hours were based on CDL expectations. However, Division 22 standards for instructional hours apply as normal for the 21-22 school year. To allow for this flexibility to occur, our school board must conduct a hearing at a school board meeting prior to the start of the school year. The board may then vote to approve increased flexibility for the high school to grant students and parents requests for late arrival, early dismissal, or an open period in the student schedule should students' request exceed the 80% mark for a school, which is the current state limitations requirement. The board is required to hold a public hearing and then vote to approve on an annual basis before September. We have included the previous information regarding students that have requested less than a full day schedule for the 2021 school year as a reference. It really doesn't apply because we were in CDL for the majority of the year. There were no 10-day drops and students could just not attend the classes. So back to a regular school year with Division 22 instructional hours. So the high school administration is recommending approval of this flexibility for the school year. And it ties again directly into Dave Parker's first presentation in terms of the equity framework. And as we approach this new year, providing that flexibility because we're not sure what kind of flexibility will be needed for families. Reminder, the parents must approve their students. They fill out a form. It's looked at over with the high school administration or counselors or both, and then a decision is made based on the individual circumstances. So again, the board is where the administration is asking for your flexibility once again for the 21-22 school year.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John?
Yeah, I just have a couple of questions. I think I just clarifying, just reaffirming probably questions, but John, if we need to do this if we are going to approve over 20% of the students flexibility to have late arrival or early release. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And as you can see, last year, Mark, we hit 11%, but that was,
okay, got
you know, and we've got to do this up front where we haven't done the scheduling yet, you know, for parents. They've turned in their requests, and the high school team's building a master schedule. They have a master schedule built and they're populating. But as you know, as a former high school principal, there's a lot of revisions that are being made, you know, in the fall when students actually return.
Right. So I guess my only concern is, I think, you know, with the new schedule, the new number of courses that students can take in the 4 years, I just wonder if we're going to see more and more. Like you said, John, the last 18 months, it's been, well, it's been pretty artificial, but going forward, it'll be interesting to watch and see these numbers. Because I think students can accumulate quite a few credits early, and then, you know, their junior and senior years, I don't know how many releases they might want. So
I think though that we've talked about this every year, and I think John's mentioned it pretty much stays consistent, doesn't it, with the percentage of how many are utilizing the early release or late start?
Yes, in a normal year, it has. Again, we're kind of in uncharted waters coming out of, you know, the pandemic, so we just don't have data to pull from such an event.
But the change recently has been we've increased the number of opportunities for students to get credits, right? And I think that was just 2 years ago, or maybe it was 3. I can't remember. So I think it's changed in the last 2 or 3 years, and so it will be interesting. And then we had the COVID, and so it will be interesting going forward to see if those numbers stay the same. I just kind of guess that they're going to go up because students can accumulate so many credits early, but we'll see.
Yeah, and total transparency, we have a lot of students missing credit. So that, you know, it's also the social and emotional wellness, what's going on in family scenarios, you know, all those components and factors that we just don't know. You know, if you're doing pencil and paper, yeah, we shouldn't probably be over the 20%, but it's all the other factors at play. And unfortunately, we need to do this now per state regulations before the start of the school year.
Okay.
But you guys also look at if they're on track with their credits before you would approve it anyways, right? Yeah.
Karen, do you want to elaborate on that? Usually, yes, absolutely, but there's.
I mean, you're not going to say you can miss 2 classes a day when you're not online to graduate. So.
Exactly. I mean, they've got to be pretty extreme, extenuating circumstances to go below a full schedule if you're not on track, right? If you're not on track, you're not getting it. You're going to be in, you know, classes, and you're going to be recovering credit and getting the support you need. So yeah, you're right, Val.
Yeah, and then the other thing, you know, to keep in mind is that athletes have to take at least 5 classes or whatever it is. So we'll keep a lot of kids in school that way too.
And like you said, we've talked about this before, where we've got some kids that, yeah, they could be done early, but they take advantage of our career pathways. They take advantage of the college credits, the AP classes. You know, if they can go into college and not have to pay an extra year's tuition or even a half year's tuition, and get it for free. I mean, why not?
Right.
Well, I guess that's what I'm hoping too, but time will tell, I think.
Any other questions for John or Karen? Okay, I'm going to make the motion. I move the approval of the OAR 582-022-2320 required instructional time for 2A, A, B, C, and the B part for the 21-22 school year. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
And discussion? All those in favor, we'll do a roll call. Narcy,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and myself is the yes. The next item is contracted staffing services by Kim Shear, the
Karen.
Director of Student Services.
Yep, I'm back. On the August 9th meeting, the board approved us to use a particular vendor we had received a bid for 2.5 FTE for SLPs. That vendor was unable to provide us any applicants. So we went and inquired with several other places that have some options for us. Even some of these contracted services are having a really hard time finding people to work. So I also need to admit to you, my math was wrong. So that amount you see there is not correct. What we're asking tonight is that you approve up to a certain amount, up to $351,400 for 2.5 FTE for the 21-22 school year. And that would be on hiring availability and contract negotiations with a qualified contracted service agency. So not choosing one particular agency. And that would allow us the flexibility to be able to find folks a lot sooner.
Is that what we had budgeted?
Yeah, so I actually have 3 licensed FTE budgeted, but we were able to kind of redo our numbers and we'll translate that into contracted costs. So it won't be any additional out of our budgeted FTE.
Okay.
It's just a 1-year agreement?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I had
Go
to
ahead,
read
Mark.
again, I had to read this twice, Kim, because I thought, well, we've already done this.
I know. This particular agency we've worked with before. I mean, they haven't had trouble, but this year they've told us that they're having a lot of folks that they're either not wanting to work in person or they're not able to find people.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Narcy, go ahead.
Kimberly, can you remind us how many students would be serviced by this?
Oh, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. But it is a pretty high incidence disability category that they particularly serve. So you'd be talking quite a few of our students for speech language services.
Thanks.
Any other questions? I need a motion to approve the contracted staffing services.
Okay, I'll move that we approve the staffing for Kim 351. What was it?
351,400.
Okay, for 351,400 for 2.5 full-time employees, speech language pathology positions, in student services for the 21-22 school year.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? I'll do a roll call. Mark,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Narcy,
Yes.
and I'm a yes also. The next item on our agenda is future action items, so you can look at those future action items. Anyone want to add anything? Or any questions about the future action board discussions? Okay, there is, I think there's one other thing that was in our packet. I think it was, what was it? The Oregon English Language Learner Report is also in our packet under information. It's pretty detailed, so you can look at that if you haven't already. And there being no further business, the meeting will be adjourned at 7:42 p.m. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone, and good luck for the start of the school year.
Yes,
Thank you.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for all your work.
Good night.